Welcome back to Dr. Hollowed. In today's episode we unravel tales of the most jaw-dropping coincidences people have ever encountered. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy the video. Long odds at 1 to a little more than 2 billion. During my college years, I used to play a lot of backgammon when I lived in the dorms for a while. I was good enough that I would play for drinks and win enough to drink for free most of the time. As time went on, I bumped into several other folks who were also good players. Most of these folks would split winning games with me, with no clear winner over the course of 100 games or so. In backgammon, if the skill level is similar, the odds of one person winning over the other will statistically even out over time. During this time, I often played with a young Chinese woman who consistently won every single game I played with her. It was unnatural. It didn't matter which backgammon set we used, whose dice we used, or whether she used a dice cup or her hands. She consistently won over 100 straight games against a decent player. During the last game I played with her, I finally had her in a gammon situation and was confident I would finally win a game. Over the course of the next few turns, she rolled exactly the rolls she needed to win. I, being frustrated and stupid, invoked the B word. She immediately scooped up the dice and, with a steely glint to her eyes, said, "Don't," and rolled double ones, "ever," and rolled double twos, "call," and rolled double threes, "me," and rolled double fours, "that," and rolled double fives, again, and rolled double sixes. I stared at the double sixes, sat back in amazement, and was astounded at what I had just witnessed. We never played or really talked again. She avoided me after that. I don't know if I truly offended her with my ill-considered words or if she was afraid I would question her abilities to so clearly exert physical control of the dice. In hindsight, I should have said, "Teach me." My husband and I have parallel lives to the people who lived in the house before us. I have exactly the same career as the woman, and my husband has the same career as the man. One of the sales points was that the room that my husband loved was to his specifications, almost right on. Just a few changes were needed. We have one kid, and they have one kid. I also found out that the people who lived in the house before us knew one of my good friends at work. I found out that my husband and I met in a very similar way to how the couple met. We all had fertility problems. Our interior house was almost exactly the same color as our other house. We are now moving because we are broke. Exact same situation, with the exception that we are not getting a divorce yet. The couple separated after they moved from the house. I live in a large city in Southern California. When I got my DUI, I was lucky enough to be arrested by a cop who was nice enough to drive me to a nearby friend's place. I lived an hour away. I get out of the car, thank the cop, and stand in front of the apartment complex, not knowing what to do or how to get in the building. It was 4 a.m, my friend wasn't home, and my phone was dead. Less than a minute later, a girl leaves the building, at 4 a.m, and holds the door for me. I think, that's my luck. And enter the building. Now, how the hell do I find an apartment to sleep in? I know my friend locks his door, so I think, I'll just find an unlocked door, pass out at the stranger's place, and explain it to them nicely in the morning, as I'm still drunk. I try the first door on my left, and it's unlocked. I get in, immediately find an empty bed, and pass out. I wake up in the morning to find out that I have slept in the bed of a friend's friend, who was totally cool with the situation. Oh, and all this occurred in the city of Baltimore, so no, sleeping outside was not on my mind. This might not be insane, but it is the most recent. I was driving through the neighborhood on Wednesday, not really paying much attention to anything, when I noticed a very tall fence almost totally obscuring a house that sat well back from the road behind the local dog park. I didn't think much of it, other than wow, I never noticed that before. A 2-story red fence like that should stand out more. I made my way back to my apartment, past the social dregs that are starting to invade my street, and thought about how badly I needed to start looking to move. Later, as I'm about to go to bed, I send myself a reminder to call a former coworker the next day and see if he wants to grab lunch sometime. Fast forward to Thursday morning, I get to work and check my email, and there is an email from said former coworker randomly sending me a lead on an apartment on this end of town. I call the number, and they give me the address. After work, I head down the street, turn down the road by the dog park, pull into the lot, call the landlord back, and he steps out of a gate on the side of the big red fence. 1994, 19 years old, living in Portland. Friends and I got stoned one night while listening to the radio. The announcer comes on, a treasure hunt contest is underway, and every night they give out a new clue to the location of a hidden golden certificate, redeemable for a $100,000 cash prize. That's a lot of buds, and it's hidden somewhere in our town. We tune in every night, get off our asses to go search several locations, no luck, time passes, we lose interest. A few weeks later, a chick comes into the restaurant that I work in and asks me out, WTF. I had just bought a car, an Audi 5000. We go retro that very night, drive-in movie double feature Maverick, followed by Jurassic Park. It starts raining during so we make out for a while. It's a boring movie anyway. Then, J starts, and being a nerd at heart, I stop the passion to watch some Raptors, clever girl, yada, yada. Windows foggy, still raining, turn key, start windshield wipers, all good. Or so I thought. As the When Dinos Rule the World banner falls, wipers suddenly get really slow. Try to start the car, the battery's dead. The show ends, it's late. Ask the dude next to me for a jump, okay? Pop the hood, there's no freaking battery in my new car. WTF Audi? Dude leaves. Me, the girl, and the concession stand crew are all that's left, and they are closing their shit down fast. I've got $10.25. I use the 25 cents at the payphone in front of the drive-in to call a cab. I tell her to take the $10 and get home. Nice girl, very cool. I ask her to call my roommate first thing in the morning to come get me a jump. So here I am, spending the night in the car, at the drive-in, in the boondocks. Close your eyes, fall asleep. Awaken at like 4 a.m. to a total WTF moment. A shadowy figure is stalking around in the empty drive-in lot, and he's carrying a big fricking stick. Seriously WTF. It is pitch black, except for a little street lamp at the entrance by the payphone. The dude disappears behind the concession stand, and I bolt out of there and jump the fence. I'm at the payphone, right outside the gate. I call my roommate to collect. Dude, sorry to wake you, but you gotta come pick me up. He's on his way. Half an hour passes, I'm still standing by the phone, listening and watching for the creeper, and the sun starts to come up. It turns out that the dude with the stick is a janitor picking up fricking trash with one of those fricking poker sticks. I jump back over the fence and tell him that my car wouldn't start, that my friend was coming, and that we couldn't find the battery. He says, Audi, huh? Did you look under the seat? That's where the battery is. Sure enough, he's right. Really, WTF Audi. Friend comes, jump starts car, we're Audi 5000, G. The girl calls the next morning. I tell her thanks and decide not to see her again. I can't top that date. Some birds' colors are just too bright. Life goes on. Then one night, a few weeks later, I'm watching the local news. A guy won the $100,000 prize by finding the radio station's hidden treasure. The picture on the TV looks strangely familiar. The winner of the $100,000 prize happened across the winning ticket by chance when he noticed a shiny golden certificate pasted on the side of the payphone at the drive-in theater. Lottery fail. This was not me, but my parents. My dad was born near Bangor, Maine, and when he was 12, he went to live in a small town of 7,000 outside of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. This was the same town my mom was born and lived in, but they did not know each other due to their 9-year age difference. Fast forward 4 years, and my dad moves to a small town outside Charlotte, North Carolina, and 2 years later, my mom moves to the same town. In 6 years, my dad enlists in the Air Force and transfers to NM to aim high, or whatever. My mom moved to the same town to go to college, but they still never met. My dad transfers to Alaska, and my mom flies to Charlotte on the same day. My dad decides to go to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, when his enlistment ends, and he meets my mom for the first time on her last day of vacation there. They fall for each other quickly and are married 3 months later. I was on a cruise, and it was the second night in, and my girlfriend and I were looking through the photos that they took of you when you embarked. While looking through them for us, I see a picture of my best friend from high school and his girlfriend, and my immediate reaction is, what are you doing on my ship? Anyway, so I tracked them down and encountered his girlfriend leaving a dining room for the bathroom. She was really confused but happy to see us. Up until this point, I figured they had to have known, but I quickly realized that they didn't and that there was now a spare seat next to my mate in the dining room. Anyway, I casually just went in there and sat down next to him, gave him a hey man, and proceeded to casually read the menu. I got the most confused look I have ever seen on a person's face that night. I have had about 30 insane coincidences. In order of most impressive to least impressive. Royal flush in poker, twice, playing casually with the English students at U of W, both times taking out the same guy there, both times he had a straight flush. The first person I ever talked to through Kazaa, the music download thing, was my former female best friend, I am male, from Manitoba. I was complimenting her for downloading a little bit of MP3. I told my very serious girlfriend's very French dad that I was an expert magician, for the lols, and told him I could cut to the ace of spades no matter how much he shuffled. I was intending to just 1 out of 52 chance it and then explain that I'm an NG that blows people's minds just under 2% of the time. The funny thing was, the girl's dad was actually a magician himself, so he was watching me very closely. I, of course, pulled the ace of spades. He flips his shit and continuously tries to ask me how I do it. He gets the suspicion that I was just doing it based on the odds. I tell him I'm not, and I proceed to do it again. Later, when explaining this story to my mom, while demonstrating with a deck of cards, I do it again. This was all before that XKCD comic. My mom's computer password is the same as my girlfriend's. Neither are in the top 100 most used passwords. I wasn't listening in math class in grade 12, talking to my friends, of course, and the teacher asked me what the answer was to a decently hard math problem. And I just said 12 because I thought he was talking about a math problem I had done for an assignment. It turns out it was 12, but it took the teacher about 5 minutes of math to prove it. He then asked if I could possibly be talking to my friends and solving a math problem without paper. I was trying to convince someone I worked with that the numbers 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, and 27 had just as much chance of winning the lottery as 1, 13, 24, 44, etc. To prove me wrong, he bought one ticket with the numbers 21, 27. Of course, he wins more with those numbers than he ever has, nothing huge, just like $1,000 or so, and tells everyone that I'm a statistics genius, completely invalidating my point. While retelling a story to my friends, I said, "So I go, 'Hey John, you're a plumber, right?' And some dude on the sidewalk in plain clothes goes, 'Yeah, how do I know you?' Super confusion ensues. I really hit it off with this really sexy looking girl at the beach. My mom's side of the family is Catholic, so I have 7 aunts and uncles on that side, all of whom have tons of kids. Of course, she was the one person on the beach who was my cousin that I hadn't met. Luckily, nothing happened, though, because we discovered we both had to go to this stupid family thing with some cousins I have never met. There are more. Many more. There is one so unbelievable that I don't even want to post it. You're from Canada? Do you know Mike? Of course, I just happen to know Mike, from Canada, a country of 30 million plus people, and I happen to know Mike, my best friend at the time. I've just accepted that if everyone has coincidences, I'm that guy 5 sigmas out who has them all the time. I rounded a curve one night to find a nearly dead deer in the middle of the road and a young woman in a bent pickup truck parked on the side of the road being consoled by another driver. I dragged the deer out of the road as the cops pulled up and got permission to take it home. Free venison is delicious. That meant that I had to wait for the cop to write me a permit for the deer, but he first wrote his accident report and interviewed the young woman. I had nothing better to do in the middle of the night, so I chatted her up and ended up getting her number. A week later, we went on a nice, safe first date with her cousin and his girlfriend. During conversation over dinner, it came out that she was renting a room in the house I had rented a room in for 3 years, which I had just moved out of a couple years earlier. In a city of a couple 100,000 people, that seemed like quite a coincidence to me. 8 years ago, I received an instant message from a random woman on AIM. She said she was looking for someone, and I told her she had the wrong guy. She apologized and went on her way. A few days later, I received an IM from her again saying that she thought I was talented. She had kept me on her buddy list and saw my design website and my profile. We started chatting daily, got to know each other really well, and met for the first time in person 9 months after meeting online. We're now engaged and will marry next summer. What makes this coincidental is that she was at a bar where a guy had told her his screen name, and instead of writing it down, she just tried to remember it. One day, a few weeks later, she tried to contact the guy from the bar and typed my screen name instead. To top that off, I had only very recently turned on the option that allowed anyone to contact me, not just buddies. Had I left that off, we would have never talked. Had I not been online at that moment, we would have never met. Oh, and she's a beautiful Swedish woman. That's not coincidental, of course, just awesome. My aunt's son died suddenly at age 16. She was devastated and seriously depressed and left his room exactly as he had last left it, locked and forbidden to open to anyone. A few years later, a tornado set down in Nevada, a state not known to have such weather, and plowed through my aunt's home and promptly dissipated afterwards. My female cousins were in the house, and while shaken and frightened out of their wits by the tornado coming through the house, no one in the house was injured. The tornado sucked out the contents of my departed cousin's room, destroyed the roof over the room, and then went away. There was never a medical reason for my cousin's death. No doctor ever found out exactly why he slumped over and just died, and that has always spooked me. After a couple of years, a tornado touched down in Las Vegas of all places, precisely targeting my cousin's room, destroying only his room. Both sisters left unharmed in the house, and then the tornado vanished. Wow, what are the odds of that happening? That's some insane coincidence for you. I am also an atheist. I do not believe in God and do not support supernatural explanations. P.S. My aunt was much better after the storm and moved on with her life. She never talks about my late cousin, but that's okay, as long as she has found some happiness in life again. I went to see the movie Paranormal Activity with my fiancée, and she got really freaked out by the movie, so I thought I would mess with her. We're laying in bed that night in the darkness, and I told her to watch out for demons. She told me not to instigate, and I, not believing in demons, of course, said, "If there's a demon in this room, fuck you." She became really upset with me, so we rolled over and tried to sleep. Not 5 minutes later, I felt a sharp poke in my side. I thought it was just my waistband, so I ignored it. A few seconds later, I felt another sharp poke in the same spot. This time it was painful. I jumped out of bed and turned the light on to see the biggest spider I had ever seen indoors. In my bed, right where I was laying. It had bitten me twice. After I killed the motherfucker, my fiancé said I deserved it for invoking the demon. I still think it was just an insane coincidence. Freshman year of college, move-in day at the dorm. Some douchey frat boy knocks on my door and invites my roommate and me to a party, hoping that we'll rush. I shoo him off. Flash forward 5 years. I am moving to New York with my wife. We are in the airport and strike up a conversation with a couple that went to the same college as us. There were 20k students at my school, so not a huge coincidence, and they also happen to live in New York. We become best friends, in each other's weddings, etc. We find out after several months that we lived in the same dorm for our first years of college. He was a year ahead of me, so we missed each other by a year. We also lived in the same dorm during our sophomore years. Again, he was a year ahead of me, so we missed each other. But this is what blew my mind. We actually lived in the same dorm room our respective freshman years, and he was the douchebag frat boy on my move-in day. Pretty crazy, am I right? A long time ago, when mobile phones were not that common, important for the story, I was meeting up with an online friend for the first time to have a coffee. We were walking around looking for a coffee place when we heard sirens close by, followed by police cars and ambulances, and simultaneously said, "I've never seen a dead person." We laughed and kept on walking, not really thinking about the comment. Just as we are crossing the street, we both look ahead, and in the crowd ahead of us, there is an old woman who stands perfectly still in the middle of a moving crowd, and a second after that, she falls. Like a tree, flat down on the street. Me and my friend instantly run up to the woman, going, "Oh my God, she just died." And when we get there, there are 2 other women approaching, obviously concerned as well. They ask us and the surrounding crowd, the other people are just staring passively as they are walking by, slowly, if anyone has a mobile phone. No one replies, so I pick mine up and start dialing 112, the emergency number in my country, to ask for an ambulance. As I am dialing the number, I look up, and to my surprise, I see the crowd parting in front of me, and a guy on a bike comes in full speed through the people, yells, "Let me through, I am trained for diabetic emergencies, this woman needs my help." Makes a freaking slide brake, dismounts his bike, and starts checking the woman for life signs, puts her in the sideways position, confirms I have called the ambulance, and then takes off on his bike, saying, "Stay with her until the ambulance arrives," like it was just another minute of his normal life. A few minutes later, the woman comes, and we try to have a conversation with her. She does not speak, she just makes gestures and silent mouth movements. At this point, I start worrying, she might be seriously injured. Not a second after that thought ran through my mind, one of the 2 women that had stopped to help started gesturing to the woman and saying, "She is deaf. I know sign language." Oh, I am dumbfounded but relieved, and after a few minutes, it is clear that the old woman is shaken, but okay, and she just wants to go home. I call off the ambulance, we shake her hand, say goodbye to the 2 women, and start walking towards a coffee shop. Needless to say, I have never experienced a string of coincidences like that before. I still think I was set up for a candid camera moment. These things just don't happen. Geometry homework. In fact, geometry homework was graded for completion. I had German before geometry, and one of the other kids in there had geometry first thing in the morning, so I would sit down and do my completion-based homework for geometry in the 5 minutes at the end of class. There was one question one day that I recall involved two circles and an area, a diameter, or something. Without asking the friend or having any other inspiration at all, I wrote down 102.1 as the answer. Then I asked him, "Hey, does 102.1 sound okay for this?" "Yeah, that sounds about right," he said. Sure enough, first thing in geometry, we get around to going over the answers, and for this question, the girl in front of me raises her hand and gives the answer as 102.1. My mind was completely blown. There were infinite possibilities to guess from, and I picked the precise correct answer. I had a very close friend in elementary or intermediate school named Evan. We hung out a lot, made a lot of jokes, teased girls, and played video games. But our favorite activity was watching episodes of The Simpsons while Evan's mom made us some seriously awesome snacks. One day in winter, near the beginning of the winter/spring semester, his parents decided that they were going to upend their roots and leave to care for their ailing grandparents, who were still in Venezuela. We didn't have much time to hang out, but one of the last things we did together was watch The Simpsons episode where Bart is accused of fraud in Australia. We laughed and had a good time. Chaswazers, a fake Aussie neologism that gets coined in the episode, became a favorite pseudo-swear word of ours. We said it incessantly for the last few days, and it got imprinted on me enough that it became a permanent part of my vocabulary. Evan and I wrote each other occasionally after that, but eventually we grew apart. About 2 years after he moved, we stopped writing each other. We both discovered that girls were actually pretty awesome and started dating them. Keeping in touch fell by the wayside. 10 years later, I had graduated college and was in the workforce doing some software work for a startup. I drove up with my girlfriend and 2 college buddies to meet my family in upstate New York for a much-needed summer vacation. As we're driving up I-95 along the mid-Atlantic states, I see a car pull over to the side of the road with steam and water spraying out of the hood. Since we're making good time, I figure it won't detract much from our route if we stop to help this guy for a second. I pull over behind the car and walk up to the driver, who's obviously exasperated and dialing a tow truck. Chaswazers, I hear him mutter as he surveys the damage. You know how sometimes your brain struggles to wrap its head around an observation to make sense of what it's seeing? At that moment, it was like a gigantic crowbar had been jammed in the works of my mind. For a full 3 seconds, I lost all the capability of conscious thought. What came out of my mouth was, "No way." I hesitated for a second before adding, "Evan?" It was him. We spent hours at the nearest rest stop, exchanging stories, and we never made it up to New York that day. My friends weren't very thrilled about missing a day of great weather for some random dude they didn't know, but I didn't care. For a brief few hours, it was like we were kids again, making pillow forts or arguing about which Mortal Kombat character was the best. It was easily the greatest afternoon of my life. Next summer, I'll be the best man at Evan's wedding. I miss you, buddy.